20 minutes to the top of the hour. Hello, thank you so much for staying on the AM show. I'm Bernice Abubedulansa. We start off our big stories with this one. An investigative piece by the Fourth Estate has reviewed how some parents are charged between 8,500 cedis to 20,000 cedis to get the awards in grade A senior high schools. This issue is critical because the 2023 results for the BECE are out and the computerized school selection and placement system will begin very soon. Well, we will be delving much deeper into the details of that piece by the Fourth Estate, but here are some excerpts.
The Ministry of Education set up a resolution center at the Natal complex to resolve complaints regarding the computerized school placement system. When the Fourth Estate visited the center, desperate parents were found negotiating and seeking help on the placement of the awards. In that building was a network of security men and cleaners who served as liaisons between the desperate parent and officials of the CSSPS. The Fourth Estate reporter who went undercover met Eric Agri, a cleaner. He indicated he could help change a placement from Apam Senior High School to Infantiman Senior High School at a fee.
Big school and big school, and yet better as the amount I will about still with me answer from I found out.
But in less than 24 hours, Eric increased the amount from 7,000 to 7,500 Ghana cedis and would not reduce it. We presented another candidate who had been placed in Wesley Girls in Accra and wanted a higher grade school, Agri Memorial Zion Senior High School in Cape Coast. Eric demanded 8,500 Ghana cedis for that slot. After demanding and receiving payments, the syndicates changed the placements of the candidate from Accra Girls Wesley to Agri Memorial Zion Senior High School in 2 days. Why are they? With 8,500 cedis, the CSSPS was undermined as placements was changed from Accra Wesley Girls to Agri Memorial Zion School, Cape Coast, and with 11,000 Ghana cedis, placements was changed from Presbyterian Senior High Technical School, Ebri, to Infantiman Girls Senior High School. The most sought-after Category A schools such as Wesley Girls at the time of our investigation were going for as high as 20,000 Ghana cedis.
If only 2 people have access to Category A schools, you're able to tell who did the placement for a certain student. So if these allegations come up as saying that, oh, a parent had paid money and this student have found himself at this school, you go to the system and IT people are able to tell which of the 2 people did the placement. So it becomes much easier than a situation where you have 100 people with IDs and it takes you so long to determine who did the placement for this person. So that is why access to Category A is very restricted.
If there's fraud in the matter, then myself as Director General and the Minister should take the responsibility. I fully accept that and I fully agree. But that is also the reason why I knew that I'm part of it. I took measures to ensure that the issues relating to corruption and the place on the payment of monies and things like that have been dealt with. And I wrote to the CID and then the BNI.
You've either heard stories about this or been a victim yourself. What the Fourth Estate seeks to do is to show proof to all the rumors we've been hearing over the years. Well, this morning, to help me digest the issues further, Clement Apak is with Parliament's Education Committee. He's a deputy ranking member. And we have Dr. Peter Anti, Executive Director at the Institute for Education Studies, and Divine Pe, Programs Manager, Africa Education Watch. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Apak. Clearly, you aren't surprised by this. You sit on the Education Committee, and almost all these things are on your fingertips. What do you think this documentary does for the system in helping us correct the mess that has already been created?
I look for you.
Well, too bad. I'm told we lost Dr. Clement Apak. So let me pose that question to Dr. Peter Anti. Doc, if you heard me, you work within the education space, and I'm sure you aren't surprised by what we're seeing and hearing. What is your initial reaction to this, and what impact do you think this documentary will have in any way, if it's going to have any?
Good morning, and thank you for your question. Yes, we have heard rumors of this activity where people pay huge sums of money to get the awards placed in specific institutions. In the first place, it defeats the purpose of the school placement that was introduced by the government.
Hello, Dr. Anti. Hello, Doc. Oh, it appears we've lost Doc there. Divine Pe, in this documentary, hello, Divine, can you hear me? Divine, kindly unmute your device. Hello, Divine. Well, it seems we have a challenge with our lines. I'm told Dr. Clement Apak is back on. Hopefully we can have a more stable connection with our guests. Good morning to you, Doc, and great to have you here. So in the documentary, we learn a few things, okay? And for those who may not be aware, there's a 10% allotment for category A and B schools that are reserved for protocol placements. And this is done when the general placements are done, and which are done on merit. Looking at what this story reveals, is it really necessary to have these protocol reservations?
Well, first of all, I have also had a chance to see some of the documentary, not all of it. But from what I have seen so far, I think what has been uncovered makes nonsense of the CSSPS system. The reason why Ghana as a nation chose to invest colossal amounts of money into an artificial system of placing students in senior high schools after their completion of junior high schools was to take away the human element, to take away bias, and to show fairness and equity, so that it is those who are most desiring, based on the outcome of their results, who get placed at the schools that they so qualify for. Now, when you have situations, be it protocol or otherwise, where there is then the human element to decide who goes where, and we now see in the video that, as a matter of fact, grade A and B schools, which are usually highly sought after, are not being given all their students based on merit, but a lot of students are placed in those schools on ability to pay. That clearly cannot be the intent.
Doc,
and that cannot be the way forward.
Doc, I mean, you say you have not seen the full documentary, but there are a few facts I'd like to share so that we don't, go into the arena of too much conjecture. So what we're told, according to that documentary, is that after the school placements are done based on merit, 10% of the vacancy for grade A and B schools is allocated to the Ministry of Education and the schools themselves. And these are for protocol placements, right? So it's not as if the entire process does not go through the CSSPS as we are being told. But when it comes to the issue of these protocol vacancies, then that's when people take monies in order to place certain students there. And that's why I'm asking if it is even important to have these protocol placements in the first place, because without them, clearly, then there will not be this issue we are discussing.
Well, but that's the point I'm making. Yes, I may have spoken generically, but it does not in any way dilute what I am trying to say. So what I am saying is that it is totally needless. Well, what is the point of that protocol arrangement? What is the point of those protocol allocations?
Well, we are told that, people like yourself, people in parliament, MPs, old students of certain schools are given some, leeway when it comes to having access to admissions in these schools. And we know that this is something that happens. There are some influential people in society who may be able to pull a string or two when it comes to placing a ward in a certain school that that child wants to go to.
But you see, that is unacceptable. I have been opposed to anything protocol because it never ensures equity. It doesn't ensure fairness. It is usually biased. And I'm not surprised that it is that conduit that is being used as an incentive to sell slots. I mean, between you and I, what this documentary is revealing is that without that protocol arrangement, then very likely those who are auctioning, and I want to use the word auctioning, those who are auctioning the placement through their agents, as we saw in excess of the documentary, will be out of business. And I'm sorry to say that this is replicated in almost every other institution that requires recruitment of one form or the other. When is it going to stop? We see it happening with recruitment into the Ghana Police Service, immigration, the Ghana Army, and you name it. And now it is being revealed that it is also happening in the placements of students into senior high schools. So I am totally opposed to anything protocol. Let those who qualify go through the needed processes and let them gain the admissions legitimately, not because of who they are, where they come from, who they have been born to, and who they know.
Go now to Divine, Programs Manager at Africa Education Watch. Divine, so, I mean, way back in high school, I knew of some of my colleagues who came in through the protocol list, and it was something that, we used to say we knew about, but at the time, there were no conversations about payment of huge sums of money. In this documentary, the investigator paid as much as 11,000 cedis to a woman who once worked at the canteen of the Education Ministry. In some cases, 20,000 cedis was demanded. And for this woman who used to work at the school canteen of the Education Ministry, she was able to change the placement of a ward from Ebrisek Tech to Infantaman Girls, a grade A school. You have been working within this sector for a very long time, but this new dimension, this huge amount of money that is being paid, are you just learning about it, or this is something that has been happening over the years?
All right, thank you, and good morning to your viewers. First of all, let me commend the Fourth Estate for sharing light on this happening. Already we know about it, but it hasn't come to public domain like this. So it's just good that we commend them for the effort they have done. Let me also express my disappointment in the security agency, i.e., the NIB, and then the CID of the Ghana Police. It looks to me like there's a lack of interest in the case. I watched the full documentary. Manasseh shared the link to the full documentary a few minutes ago. So, and I think that was what I was watching. That's why I was not able to hear you initially. So I've watched the documentary, and there have been instances where the police have pulled out from the investigation. The NIB also pulled out when the former Director General of Ghana Education survey, Professor Opoku even wrote to the police service to take action. And they also withdrew. It got to the point the police started an investigation and they also had to stop. And if you look at the end of the video, all the people that were arrested were just the middlemen. None of the personnel were from the Ghana Education Service or the Ministry of Education or the Computerized School Selecting and Placement System Secretariat. None of the persons arrested were from such places. So I'm so disappointed in the police. It looks more like they are not interested in following up to the logical conclusion of this case. Notwithstanding, this issue is not new to some of us. We have been watching the space and we know of it. A lot of people have abused the 5% protocol placement that have been allotted to senior high schools so that they can distribute among their various stakeholders, for example, all students, staff members, wards, and also traditional seats. Some of these vacancies that have been given to these schools because of the 5% have been abused. But again, when you look at the video, you watch the video, you have realized that the issue is not entirely about the 5% protocol allotment to the schools or the 5% protocol allotment to the Ministry of Education. It is more also about an attempt to be able to change an already placed school for a child. So that one has nothing to do with the 5%. It means the child has in place, but some people can still go into the system and change the placement to another school. So the child wants to move from an already placed grade A school and go into another grade A school. The system, persons managing the system are able to change that. So it is not entirely about the protocol list. It means that even if the system has placed you, some persons are still able to access and change their placement. This is how the placement works. Understanding that will help us follow this discussion. So once the results are released, as it was released last week or so, what the system will do is to input the grades of the students. Let's say all students that have chosen Achimota and then grade A school, and then the system will select all the papers that are put there and put them into the system. Now, it runs with competition. Once the system notices that you have a good grade matching your program, the system will then move to say if your preferred residential status is available, boarding or day. If your preferred residential status is available, it places you in the school. If it is not available, the system sends you to your second choice. And again, it runs the process in your second choice. If your grade is matching the program in your second choice, if yes, it is matching your grade in your second choice and your residential status is available, it places you. If it is your residential status is not available, it sends you to your third choice. So what it means is that the system should be able to do this on its own without persons changing it. Once the system has run this on merit base and somebody can still have access to the system to go and change it, then the narrative should not be limited to just that the protocol list is being abused. No, it means that even the merit base that we are talking about, that the system should be able to place you based on merit by matching your grade to your program in your first choice and to see whether your grade is good for that program in that first choice. If it is not good, it sends you to your second choice. If it is good, it checks whether your residential preference is available. If it's not available, it sends you to your next choice. If it's available, it places you in school. So the system itself is being abused, and we should be worried about that equally, not just the protocol that is being given to the schools and then the ministry being abused, but also the system is still being compromised. And for me, I feel that the Minister of Education should be much interested in this, because if you watch the video, the investigation indicated that only 2 persons have password access to the category A schools, i.e. the Minister of Education and then the Director General of Ghana Education Service, in this case, the former one, Professor Opoku. Only the 2 of them have access to the category A school, the password to access the category A schools. So if there have to be any approval for change in this category A school, it means that it must have the express approval of any of these two individuals.
And Divine,
so
that's
documentary is
that's
pointing fingers at any of these individuals, I feel they should also be interested in following this case to its conclusion. But
Divine,
where the investigation is going,
Divine, can you hear me?
And then, hello, can I be heard?
Divine, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can
right.
You hear me?
Yes, I can. Apologies to interject, but on the point of who must take responsibility for this fraud within the system, the former Director General of the GES, Professor Opoku Amankwa, mentioned, and you've already hinted at that he realized this, informed the security agencies about it. There was some form of investigation happening, but it was stopped suddenly. He does admit, though, that if anybody should take the blame, it should be him and the Minister of Education. But here's the other thing. We know how these things work in government institutions, and how, even clearly with this one, when there's somebody who really wants to see a change or a stop to it, they're either frustrated by another agency that's responsible for ensuring that the rot is cleared. Is it fair then to say, for example, and I've posed this question to the producers of the documentary, and hopefully they will respond to it. If the minister or the GES boss was given a list of changes and he had to approve it, was he aware that money was taken for that? Should we really be blaming them for the fraud? Yes, one of them says he's aware of it. He was trying to do something about it. But is that the case? Is that a true picture? Because like I'm saying, and I don't want to begin to mention other agencies to dilute this conversation, but it happens all over the place. You go to a place as a boss, you try to effect change, and then before you realize, you're either moved or you don't make any headway because they are entrenched. There are people within the system who have done this for so long and wield so much power. Sometimes it will surprise you beyond the people who sit at the top.
Yeah, Zoe. So that's where I'm coming in, that the minister himself should be much interested in this case to ensure that investigation is fully done. Yes, we could have the case that a list of changes have been brought to you. Per the documentary, we understand that only the minister and the former or the Director General of Ghana Education Service, in this case, the former one, have the password to the A schools. And if there's to be any change, only them can approve that. Once the documentary is pointing fingers at you, it is very important that you let investigation come to a full conclusion. But where the police or the security agencies seem not to be interested in it, they themselves need to be worried and be able to push for this. So it's surprising that at the end of the documentary, only the persons that were arrested were the middle individuals. No person is from the ministry, no person is from GES. And it means that once GES is even an agency of the Ministry of Education, the ministry itself can carry out its own internal investigation if the security agencies, for whatsoever reasons, not to be interested in investigating the case. Whatsoever, if they are not, once you are the minister and then a finger is being pointed at you, you should even set an internal investigation so that they can carry out the process. Whosoever may be involved could be identified. The persons that are doing the thing that have been arrested, they'll surely know somebody from the ministry that they have been dealing with. Because in the video, we heard somebody speaking to someone at the Ministry of Education, and then someone also spoke to someone at GES. What it means that they know the person they are dealing with. So if the security agencies are not interested in it, you, the one that they say you have access to the password, you should be able to even to set up internal investigation mechanisms if you want to clean up your name. Because right, I have been following the comments in Facebook once the minister was mentioned. People were saying we believe in this man, it shouldn't be this. It means that even him himself, his reputation is at stake, and therefore there's a need for some form of clearance on this,
right,
by way of a full conclusion of the investigation. So, I mean, we shouldn't let this rest. It's good that light has been thrown on this, but we need to ensure that this thing a full investigation is done, and we must be able to question the security agency why they are not interested in this case.
Right, Divine. Let me bring in.
Do as good by still pushing for this case to ensure that elements that will be within the ministry and then the GES that are doing this are brought to book. Otherwise, we'll come back discussing this issue. It's something that is within the system. We know persons are abusing the protocol list, but as I mentioned, it is not entirely about the protocol list. It's about how the system should place students on merit. Because once you can change the school of somebody that is already placed, it means that the system is no longer on merit base. Because the system, as I was explaining, is able to check your grade, compare it to your program of choice in your school. If your grade matches your program, it places you in the school based on the fact that your preferred residential status is also available. Once the system has done all this and places somebody, and somebody also has the power to go into the system to change it, it tells you that this entire system is already also not based on merit anymore. And therefore, we need not also just to rest on the protocol aspect of it, but how individuals still have access to the system to even change an already placed student.
Right,
so for me, I believe that the minister has something to do in terms of ensuring that investigation is conclusive on this.
Okay, let me move to Dr. Clement Apak now. Doc, so I'm just learning that the ministers did say, that the minister and the former Director General did say that they are aware this is happening. But they didn't sanction it. Neither did they take any money from anybody to approve anything. All they know is that a list appears on their table and they have to approve that list. So you understand how these things work. And obviously, as someone who has been in Parliament for this long, and I've referenced other government institutions without mentioning names because I don't want to dilute the conversation, but we know how these things pan out in different institutions across the country. Should we be laying the blame squarely at the feet of the ministers? If so, what of the minister and the former GS boards? If so, what should be done to ensure that, for once, we'll be able to say this is a thing of the past?
Responsibility is that of the minister, because the Ghana Education Service is an agency under the ministry. And from what I know, from the documentary and even my private conversations with those who know the way the system works, the Director General and the Minister are the two persons who have access, unfettered access, as far as the placement system is concerned, and particularly so to do with grade A and grade B schools. So if we have seen that placements are being sold and auctioned for persons to get the awards into grade A and grade B schools, you cannot tell me that the minister can feign innocent. If he knows that he hasn't done that, he's done no wrong, then he should be the one eager. He should have been championing the call for an investigation to fish out those who are doing it so that he can exonerate himself. Barring that, and given the liturgical attitude of security agencies towards investigating this matter, it seems to suggest that it is an institutionalized cabal that is at work. And perhaps there are many tentacles that the octopus has. So my suggestion would be that at this point, we ought to be looking at the Office of the Special Prosecutor or the Commission for Human Rights and Administrative Justice to look into this matter. The disinterest of the security agencies is very telling. And the fact that, quote unquote, this has been known to be happening, and yet calls for an investigation have not been championed aggressively, particularly by the ministry, leaves a lot to be desired.
All right, Doc, at the heart of this problem is the craze for certain schools. And over the years, we've tried to, integrate the system, help people understand that you don't necessarily have to be in this school to be, somebody in future. But it appears that it's still at the heart of the issue. How do we deal with the problem where students, accept the level or whichever institution that they are given to go study in?
You see, this revelation raises a number of issues, and even then goes to the core of the credibility, fairness, and equity within the context of the entire CSS PS program. And remember that this is a computerized system that the state has invested massively in. A whole secretariat has been recruited to undertake this activity. And so when you have situations where changes can be made in a way and manner that even the minister and the former director of the Ghana Education Service would say that they are not aware of, then that tells you that the possibility of students who had already originally been placed by the system being dislodged by the selfish individual greedy interest is very prominent. And that is my worry. And that is why I am saying that this matter ideally should elicit the highest form of investigation, because the implications are far-reaching. Implications are far-reaching. And that is my biggest worry. And until we begin to investigate, identify, and punish publicly punish and shame those who are compromising our system, those who are using privileged positions to profit, we are going to go nowhere. I'm sad to say.
Privileged positions. What exactly do you mean?
Well, somebody is allowing what is going on to go on. I mean, we've seen the documentary, at least I've seen excess. The lady who used to work at the canteen, and the other young man that I saw, and the one who was also showing had the phone where he was receiving information from somebody indicating the schools, grade A schools that had vacancies. Clearly, they are the minnows. You know, they are in the periphery. There are those in the center of affairs who are filtering this information to them. And those are the people that we should be interested in. And those are the people we must uncover, prosecute, jail, humiliate, and expose to serve as a deterrent. That is what we have to do.
So we're learning that for the 2022 BEC, okay, we are not learning. We do know that the results are out and the placements will begin soon. The students will begin to know which schools they are in. About 552,276 students wrote the BEC last year. That's a huge number. We understand that in every system there will be a certain need for some corrections to be made here or there. As MP, I'm pretty sure that you may have encountered a student who did so well but didn't get their school of choice and may feel discouraged and may want to, try to solicit your help. In that regard, how do we deal with those other problems that are created within the system without going this route?
It's an issue. I mean, the pressure is already on. Year in, year out, there's always pressure on every member of parliament because the perception is that we are allocated some protocols for, school placement, recruitment into the army, police service. But I tell you, it is not true. As a minority member of parliament, since I joined Ghana's parliament in, the 7th parliament, 2017, I'm yet to have any opportunity of any protocol arrangement. So I don't know those who get those opportunities and why the rest of us have to bear the brunt. And this actually generates a lot of disaffection for us from our constituents because they feel that we perhaps are being greedy and selfish, and perhaps we get these opportunities and we don't give it to them. So this is why I am in principle opposed to anything to do with protocol, because it generates a perception that is not true. It ropes in people like myself and many others who don't have those opportunities, and yet our constituents think that we do. For me, in principle, I don't support such arrangements. If there are corrections to be made and there are legitimate matters to deal with, that is different from saying that we are going to reserve 10%, 5% of placement allocations or recruitment into a security agency for protocol just because of persons who are privileged in society. If we are going to continue to be giving opportunities to those who are already privileged in society, then what is going to happen to the less privileged? Is that the type of society that we are trying to build? So the wealthy, the influential, and the elite should continue to get all the best opportunities to the detriment of the rest of the population? Is that how to build a nation?
But is that not what the system has created already? Because if you go to certain schools...
That is not acceptable. I don't agree with what the system has created. That is my whole point.
If you go to certain schools...
Just because the system has created it does not mean that we should condone it.
Yeah,
that is a bad system.
I'm making a point. So when you go to certain schools, they have more facilities, they have better learning systems. And I know this because I have been exposed to different senior high schools and I know how things are done there. So in some schools where they have a very vibrant old students association, you realize that they're providing so much for the schools because of government's inability to do so in certain instances. And so you realize that there's already a gap. And that's why a lot of students will prefer one school over the other. And in cases where they think that they did extremely well and they should be in that school and they were not given the school, that's when the parents sometimes will go through everything, will go all lengths to get them, like paying 20,000 cedis just to place your school, your ward in a certain school. So aren't we missing the point if we do not deal with this system where other schools have better facilities and better opportunities than others? And if we deal with this before that, aren't we putting the cart before the horse?
Well, the issue is multifaceted. We can tackle it from a multiplicity of angles. Yes, you are talking about the systemic factors influencing the current situation. I do agree that if, for example, every single senior high school across the length and breadth of the country had equal capacity, facilities, teachers, infrastructure, and what have you, then there wouldn't be the need for parents to try to struggle and to pay huge amounts of money for the awards to gain admission into specific schools. So yes, if every school was a grade A school, then there wouldn't be this sort of, animal farm type of competition, survival of the fittest. Sadly, it is not. So yes, ultimately, what we should be working towards is to ensure that every single school, every single secondary school in this country has the same facilities. I will use my own constituency as an example. We have only two secondary schools, the Kanjara Day High School and the Fumbisi Senior Agric Secondary School. I mean, I can tell you, none of the two schools has a library. There is no science lab. There is no ICT lab. And then, yes, the facilities are simply deficient. But if that school also had the same facilities like a Presec, an Achimota, a Wesley Girls, an Abri Girls, clearly that would have been preferable. And that would make the options available in sufficient quantities to all. And that then would have eliminated the current situation that we are discussing. But this is going to take years and a concerted effort by the nation, a serious political will to try and bring every school to par. But in the meantime, are we saying because that is not happening, we should allow the continuous fraud and the use of illegal means to allocate students of the privileged places in grade A schools to continue? My answer is no.
Dr. Peter Anti has reconnected via phone, and let's hear his thoughts on this. Doc, just before your line dropped via Zoom, you were sharing with us what your thoughts are on this and whether we will see any impact as a result of the revelations. And if we will see that impact, how do we go about correcting the system?
this should create serious changes in the CSSPS. I think that the ministry and the Ghana Education Service should come together and find ways and means to help resolve this the corruption that is taking over the program. You see, the point is that the basic objectives of this computer placement system have been defeated, and I have to state this because we introduced this at a time where we felt that the manual system had got a lot of challenges that were preventing students from easily accessing secondary education, a lot of challenges that included supposed headmasters benefiting financially from it, and that human interface and the delay in the admission process. So we decided to introduce the computer placement system to ensure that we bring in transparency, fairness in the allocation of applicants to various senior high schools. So that is the first objective of the policy. So after years of implementing this, if you see this, and I have to say that if you read research work on the purported evaluation of the CSSPS, you would see that these points are being made by various researchers in their articles that there seems to be manipulation of the placement process, and this is the greatest evidence that we have had so far as the placement corruption issue is concerned. And that is why I think that from 2015, if we made attempt, let's say after 10 years of implementing the policy, somewhere in 2015, we decided to do an evaluation of the policy, we would have seen some of these difficulties that the program is going through and would have taken steps to address it. But since we have had this, I think the authorities should take advantage of it and make changes in the placement process. I've seen letters from the Ghana Education Service and the Ministry of Education cautioning parents and telling them that they should not get themselves involved in the placement scam. I think it's a good direction, but the desire of parents to access to get the best quality education for their awards would definitely lead to them, some of them still looking for avenues to ensure that they get these things done. And that is why I think that the ministry should take a step forward and institute in-house measures that or checks that will check the abuse of the system. I've listened. I heard the minister indicating, and I know for a fact that this code, you see, because it's an IT system, anybody who goes into the system and changes or input or places a student in a particular school, that person leaves his signature, traces in the on the platform, and therefore those persons can easily be identified and dealt with.
But Doc, it's interesting because you see, from the stories that we are told, especially with the ones that received approval and a change to Infantoman girls.
Hello, please, can you speak a little bit?
I'm saying that is interesting. You know, when you raise the issue about the people who make the changes being found out and all that, at least from some of the stories we heard in that documentary, these changes were done with approval from the bosses, right? Because they cannot be done any other way. It appears that the bit of fraud ends at a certain point, and then the process resumes its normal dimension. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. So
yes, I understand. I understand.
Yeah. So just saying that going to the back end and seeing who effected that change could lead to solving the problem in this scenario that I've created doesn't really wash, does it?
No. You see, the point I'm trying to make is that if there are abuses in the system, there should be in-house measures to check those abuses. Okay. So technically, these students are placed by the system automatically. And there are human beings that work on these things. And because we know that the topmost people in these two institutions are let's say, the final point, they should be interested in finding out how this process got so much abused to this extent. And in saying this, I know I'm aware that I think last year, the Deputy Director General, Dr. Tando, was in your studios, Joy FM studios, and alluded to the fact that they have written to the NIB and then the CID to institute some sort of investigation into the matter. I also know as a fact that letters were written by the Director General to the investigative agencies to do these kinds of investigation. What I'm saying is that the topmost people should be interested in finding out those who are abusing the system. And in doing that, they should have in-house mechanisms to check the abuse. So if they have not shown interest, then at the end of the day, maybe we can say that, yes, the process ends with them, and therefore they might have knowledge of it. But if they show interest, if they call on the proper investigative authorities to investigate the abuse, if they make the report themselves, then it means that they are overwhelmed by the things that are being done by the people who are working with them and need an external help. So that is the point I'm trying to make. I know that it's not going to be easy to deal with this situation, this issue, because it's also got that aspect of the demand, the people outside trying to put pressure on those within the system to help them get whatever it is that they need. So we need to look at it from all perspectives. And I also agree with you, a point you made with Dr. Park, that if we are able to look at how we supply resources to schools in this country, it's going to help. And I always say that the model school system that was adopted by President Kufuor is one of the best policies that needed to have been continued. Because what that system did was that it tried as much as possible to raise within each district a school that can be classified as a Category A school. That particular policy has never been continued by subsequent governments or authorities. And I'm hoping that we will learn from that model and at least raise 2 or 3 secondary schools to a Category A school within districts, so that pressure on Category A schools would minimize. And in doing all these things, we'll be able to bring the fraud within the system to the barest minimum. But my last point is this: the objectives of the policy, the reason why we introduced the policy, if you look at the policy document and the various evaluations that have taken place in terms of the school placement system, I dare say that we have failed, and it is time to overhaul the system and put in place certain mechanisms that would at least bring to the barest minimum the impact of human decisions when it comes to the setup that we have.
Overhaul the system, you say. Finally, from you, Dr. Clement Park, you are on recess now. I don't know if this has come to the attention of the Education Committee in the Parliament. Has there been any interaction with your colleagues? Do you intend to take this up a notch higher? Dr. Apak? Hello, Doc? Well, it appears that we've lost Dr. Apak there. Hello, Doc, can you hear me? All right, sorry about that. We lost Dr. Clement Park there, but we still have Divine Pay, who is with Africa Education Watch. Divine, Dr. Anti says an overhaul of the system. That means that scrapping it all up, looking at a new way to go about this. Do we have the time for that? Do we have the luxury for that? Do we have the finances for that? Or you think that we should just look at modifying what already exists?
All right. I want to agree that we have to overhaul this or set it aside. It is why I've invested so much into digitizing the system. So if we have come this far, let some of these
Divine, sorry, there's a problem with your line. It keeps breaking. We can't hear you at all. Are you able to rectify that immediately? All right, looks like Divine will need a little more time to work on that. But if you just joined the program this morning, we've been discussing the recent investigative piece by the Fourth Estate into the school placement system and how there are people who are paying as much as 20,000 cedis just to get the awards into certain categories of schools that they prefer. In an instant, a former canteen worker at the Ghana Education Service was paid as much as 11,000 cedis to help change the school of a young student from Ebri Sectec to Infantaman Girls, which is a grade A school. And so what we've been trying to discuss this morning is to find out what is at the heart of this problem. Is it the issue of resources allocated to schools? Is it a thing of prestige and pride for certain students to say, I want to be in that school at all cost? What will make a parent pay 20,000 cedis to put a child in a school? In some instances, we've heard stories of people who may not necessarily even make the grade for that school, but will be forced in there some way, somehow. What is at the heart of this, and how can we solve it? We've been hearing from Dr. Clement Park, who is with the Education Committee, Deputy Ranking Member, and he's been suggesting a relook at the system, and he says that he's totally against this whole idea of the protocol list. And also Dr. Stephen Anti and Divan Pe have been sharing their thoughts as well. I've been joined by Manasseh Azuri Awuni. He's with the Fourth Estate. They produced this piece. Hello, Manasseh. I'm just wondering, with every investigative piece, there's that element of curiosity, something that piqued the team's curiosity to investigate that matter. What was it for the story?
Well, Bernice, almost every year when it is time for candidates to be placed, BEC candidates who write their exams to progress to the senior high school, we hear reports and allegations that the system, which was introduced to curb corruption, eliminate the influences of human hands and everything, has been undermined. And so we decided, actually we started 2 years ago, but there was some challenges. So we went back last year and were able to get evidence. So this is a problem that has persisted for some time now. And whenever it comes up, the authorities who are supposed to act often say they need evidence and all of that. So I don't think the average Ghanaian may not have heard about this problem. What we have done is to provide evidence and to connect the disjointed dots as far as this issue is concerned. Interesting.
So we clearly can tell from the documentary that this is a syndicate, right? This is not just a one-man thing. There are groups of people involved at different stages in doing this. Before you joined, my guest and I were trying to digest the issue of responsibility and who must really take the blame for this, considering that we don't know, at least, we don't have any evidence of the Minister of Education or the former Deputy Director General, I beg your pardon, former Director General of the GES, taking monies to make these approvals. Did they admit, though, that they are aware of the problem? How widespread is this problem?
The problem is very widespread. And I think come to the problem, you spoke about responsibility. In that documentary, the former Director General of the GES, Professor Pukwa Mankwa, said that if there is any fraud in the system, he, Professor Pukwa Mankwa, and then Dr. Yao Edichum, who is the Education Minister, should take responsibility. These are his words. And I think he said that because last year they were the only two people who had access to Category A schools, that they could do placements and then change placements and all that in the back end. They had access.
So Manasseh, that's to say that even though we didn't see them or they didn't admit to taking monies, they should have been more thorough in finding out why these changes were being made and why they needed approval for the switch.
Exactly. And also for the fact that when certain fraudulent individuals, they are just ordinary cleaners and all, are able to weed their way to the top, then we should be asking through whom did their list get to the minister's desk? So if the minister doesn't know about it, at least the minister should be able to trace, or they should be able to find out who brought that particular list, and then they will be able to sanction those people. And the most bizarre aspect of it is Professor Opoku-Amankwah actually wrote to the NI, formerly BNI, and also the CID to do investigation. And both state security agencies failed to do the investigation. Initially, they agreed, but as soon as they started, they came back and they wouldn't be able to do it. So that also gives us another layer of the issue of the problem. You know there's a problem. There are steps to unravel it. State security agencies were petitioned, and the allegation we had in our investigation was that certain powers from above stopped the investigation from happening. And if this is happening, then the question you ask yourself is, beyond these ordinary people who are taking the money, why would somebody high up be so interested in these corrupt practices that they can stop an investigation?
Right. Manasseh, you've worked on many investigative pieces, and I know that the main aim is to see change in society, is to see wrongdoers punished, to serve as a deterrent for others. With what you've just said about this investigation, even by security agencies, going nowhere, I know that you want to see a change, but for you, what would it take in order to see that what you desire, when I say you, the Fourth Estate and producers of this documentary, desire to see happen?
What we desire, and what every Ghanaian also desire, is to see that there is meritocracy in the placement system, so that children who are supposed to be put in certain schools by virtue of their performance get those schools, and that a few people are not able to buy their way to into everything or sector in this country. If you're doing this and you are buying schools for children, and they know they are going to grow with it, that children may one day be in charge of certain sensitive state institutions, and all of us are going to suffer. So what I would want to see, the Fourth Estate, or what every Ghanaian should want to see, is that investigations would be done to ascertain who got these fraudulent lists onto the minister's table or the Director General's table. And that shouldn't be difficult to find, because restriction was limited to only 2 individuals to be able to track that fraudulent activity. So they should be able to get them. And I believe that if people are punished for some of these things, you can't eliminate it 100%, but it can be reduced to the barest minimum.
Thank you for joining me this morning. Manasseh Azuri-Awuni works with the Fourth Estate, and they just released an investigative piece on the sale of placements for senior high school. So Divine Pay is our last contributor to this conversation. He's Programs Manager, Africa Education Watch. Divine, you were sharing with us something just before the line dropped. Quickly, I can't hear anything. Hello, Divine, can you hear me? Hello, Divine? Hello? Well, too bad. It appears we have a terrible connection there to Divine. He was just going to share his final words with us. Unfortunately, technology will not permit that. So if you've not been able to see the highlights of what we shared earlier, you can just get onto YouTube, and Fourth Estate uploaded version of that documentary is there for your viewing. Also later tonight at 8:30 p.m. it will be aired here on the Joy News channel. There will be more discussions on this in subsequent bulletins, so you just want to stay with us. But here